Stay in Position Radio. I know y'all seen that fight last night. Clarissa Shields. She was giving the old girl them body blows. When she get them body blows, shit, niggas gonna have to bag up. See, she bagged up. See who won. That's what we got for sports. I ain't heard too much. That's what I heard so far. We got the movies. We talked about that yesterday. But we finna talk about this dark money, and that's what's been controlling, you know, the unseen, stuff or whatever. But I'm finna get to it right now. This is coming from African Diaspora News. Stay in Position Radio, man.
What's good, family? It's your girl, LaSherica, and you already know I'm coming in hot. Before I jump into this pot, let me say how honored I am to be cooking on the African Diaspora News channel. Some folks get on here and play it safe. I'm not one of them. I'm here to keep it all the way real for my people. Shout out to Brother Phil for making sure the real voices get heard, not just the ones with the biggest donors. Now let's talk about what everybody else is too scared to address. Representative Jasmine Crockett got up on that camera and basically told all of America the truth most politicians keep hidden. The Democrats are counting on dark money to get back in power, not the people's vote, not the grassroots, but straight up dark money. And you know what? I believe her because we've seen it for decades. Jasmine didn't slip up. She laid it all out. When the pressure is on, the real always rises. And in this case, the real is ugly. Let's be honest, when Jasmine Crockett opens her mouth, it's not to empower FBAs or speak for the daily grind of Black folks. She's reading from a script written by her donors. Why do you think she's always the first face the DNC rolls out when they need someone to clap back or run interference? Sis, it's not because she's grassroots. It's because she's paid. She gets to trend for viral one-liners, but when you peel back the layers, who's really calling the shots? And behind closed doors. And let's get all the way real. This dark money isn't new. FBAs have been feeling its effects since the day our votes were allowed to count. You can trace the money trail back to Reconstruction through Jim Crow into the Civil Rights era and right up to 2025. Every time FBAs organize, build momentum, and demand real change, here comes the invisible hand. Donors, corporations, mystery PACs, all sliding bags under the table to make sure real Black power never takes root. We also know that there are donors that I'm sure are going to be willing to make sure that they are investing and making sure that they can take down some of these candidates since they don't want to rule out dark money. I'm sure some dark money gonna pour in on the behalf of the American people. So what I am saying is
let's get this straight. Jasmine Crockett, that's a house nigga. You see what I'm saying? The same nigga that was in Django, Samuel Jackson, that was a house nigga. So Jasmine Crockett, that's a house nigga. That's how she got all these $1 million homes with $100,000 salary type shit, because she a house nigga. You see what I'm saying? A paid house nigga, and that's what she is. So just because she exposing the dark money and this and that, she's still a house nigga, man. They told her to do that shit, man. Entertainment purposes only.
Tactic, as well as making sure we're touching people. It's a game as old as America, and the players never change. You want to know why nothing changes in our neighborhoods? Why every historic election gets us the same old results? Why FBAs are still at the bottom, even after marching, voting, testifying, and believing in the system? Look no further than dark money. It's the silent killer. The real reason why so many of our so-called leaders end up parroting party lines, ignoring our demands, and selling us out at every turn. Let's talk about how it works, because some folks out here think dark money is just campaign funds. Now, family, it's way deeper. Dark money buys silence. Dark money buys access. Dark money buys the loudest voices in the room and turns them into puppets for the donor class. Jasmine Crockett didn't say anything new. She just confirmed what we've always known. If you follow the money, you'll see why the same tired faces get trotted out year after year to speak for us. Here's how the hustle goes. The party's donors pour millions into super PACs, nonprofits, and backroom deals. These shadow funds pick which Black faces get elevated, who gets a seat at the table, and who gets the microphone when it's time to run cover for the establishment. You think those viral clapbacks are spontaneous? Please, it's all planned, all paid for, and all designed to distract from the fact that FBAs aren't getting a single thing out of the deal except symbolism and empty slogans. And let's be clear, the problem isn't just Jasmine. She's just the latest in a long line of shills who take bag and do the dance. The Black political political class is full of folks who started out with good intentions. But once the checks started coming, the loyalty shifted. From the people to the donors, from justice to access, from reparations to ribbon cuttings. Meanwhile, FBAs are still fighting for scraps. I want you to think about this. Every major Black politician you see trending, every viral moment, every time they're the face of the movement on TV, ask yourself, who paid for that seat? Who's funding the ads, the social media, the public relations? 9 times out of 10, it's not us. It's not our community. It's not FBA-owned media or local grassroots donors. It's billionaire money, corporate money, lobbyist money. That's the real reason our demands always get watered down or outright ignored when the cameras stop rolling. Now, let's go deeper. You know how dark money keeps Black folks out of power? By picking our leaders for us. They put money behind the ones who will toe the party line, never push for real reparations, and always have an excuse for why Black folks gotta wait some more. They buy up our preachers, our community organizers, our local officials, and our media influencers. They give the platform to those who will deliver the speech but never the results. And if you're wondering why Jasmine Crockett's out here getting all the shine, it's not because she's the best advocate for FBAs. It's because she's the safest bet for donors who need a Black face to defend the status quo. When the DNC needs a distraction, when the establishment needs cover, when they need to send out the message that the Black community is on board, who do they call? Not the grassroots, not the ones who can't be bought, but the ones who owe their whole platform to dark money. The worst part, FBAs are the ones who pay the price. Every time dark money puts one of their people in a position of power, our demands move further out of reach. We ask for reparations. They give us a study. We ask for police reform. They give us a commission. We ask for contracts and economic power. They give us a panel discussion or a grant for diversity initiatives.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrari, Chief Executive Officer of Phoenix Energy. I look forward to you joining us at our next event.
Or a grant for diversity initiatives. All of it paid for by the same donor class that's been running this hustle for generations. And now Jasmine Crockett has said it out loud. She told the world, don't worry, dark money's got us covered. No shame, no apology, no fear of backlash. That's because she knows the system will protect her as long as she protects the system. FBAs, we're just the audience. We're supposed to clap, vote, and keep it moving. But not today, family. Not on my watch. I'm here to pull back the curtain and expose every trick, every scam, every game. The days of getting played are over, and the receipts are coming in hot. Let's really cook, family, and take it back to the roots. If you want to know why dark money is the cancer in our politics, look at how it's been used to keep FBAs down for over a century. It didn't start with Jasmine Crockett, and it won't end with her unless we get wise and cut off the head of the snake. Start with Reconstruction. After slavery, when FBAs started holding office, building wealth, and voting in mass, white elites got together and said, we can't have that. They started buying off Black leaders, funding compromised politicians, and using outside money to make sure the strongest voices in our community got undercut, isolated, or flat out replaced. The promise of 40 acres and a mule, gone. Replaced by a handful of Black faces in high places who were told to keep the peace, keep the system moving, and above all, keep the donors happy. This pattern never stopped. During the Jim Crow era, when Black folks risked life and limb just to register to vote, big money in the South would bankroll, go along to get along preachers and politicians to keep FBAs in line. If you didn't play the game, you got defunded, discredited, or disappeared. The real fighters, the ones who wouldn't take a dime unless it was for the people, were always targeted, slandered, or left broke, while the puppets got the platforms. Move up to the civil rights movement. Dark money didn't just fund white resistance, it bought Black silence. Northern liberals, big foundations, and national Democrats started funneling money to certain acceptable civil rights groups. If you pushed too hard for economic justice or real redistribution, you were pushed out, spied on, or starved of funding. That's why so many movements that started with real fire, demanding jobs, land, and justice, ended up settling for integration and symbolism. The money always came with strings, and those strings were used to tie up any real challenge to the status quo. Fast forward to the 1970s and 80s, when the Black political class really got its footing. Now you've got city council members, state reps, even members of Congress who look like us but answer to donors who don't look anything like us. Their campaigns are paid for by developers, banks, and national party committees. Every dollar comes with an understanding. Protect my interests, keep your people docile, and make sure nothing truly revolutionary ever happens on your watch. And what did that get us? Black mayors who oversaw urban decay because their hands were tied by the same banks that funded their elections. School boards that closed black schools while building new ones in white suburbs, again paid for by donors. Economic development that meant gentrification for the block and luxury condos for outsiders. At every step, dark money was there to make sure FBAs never had the resources or the independence to truly break free. Now let's look at the so-called Obama era. Everybody got excited. Finally, a black president. But family, let's not forget, Obama's rise was fueled by some of the biggest donors on Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and the insurance industry. You think reparations never got a real hearing by accident? You think all that talk about a rising tide lifts all boats wasn't just code for keep the money flowing to the donor class and give black folks some symbolism? The biggest policy wins went to the biggest donors. Meanwhile, the issues FBAs cared about most were always complicated, divisive, or not the right time. Dark money isn't just a campaign problem, it's a policy problem. It shapes what gets debated, who gets platformed, and what never sees the light of day. That's why, even when FBAs mobilize and get out the vote, the end result is the same. The needle barely moves. They'll give us a commission, a holiday, or a mural. Never land, never wealth, never real ownership. Because the donor class already paid to keep those doors closed. Think about this. Every time there's a protest, an uprising, or a grassroots movement that can't be bought, watch how quickly dark money comes in to hijack, co-opt, and water down the message. They'll fund the official marches, give grants to approved organizations, and make sure all the energy gets redirected into safe, symbolic change. Meanwhile, the people who started the movement get sidelined or demonized as radical, divisive, or counterproductive. Look at Ferguson. Look at Black Lives Matter. The minute grassroots energy started shaking the system, here came the foundations, the political donors, and the party consultants. Millions poured in, but how much of that actually made it to the block? How much went to FBAs building schools, creating businesses, or fighting for land and reparations? And who got to be the face of the movement on TV? The ones with the donor-approved talking points, not the ones with real FBA demands. And don't forget, this isn't just about the national level. Local races, the judges, the sheriffs, the school boards are all up for sale. Dark money buys attack ads, funds fake grassroots organizations, and spreads misinformation to keep FBAs divided and distracted.
You know what
it's
it
chess,
is.
not checkers. And we've been the pieces, not the players. Even our media gets bought off. The newspapers, the black radio stations, the influencers. You better believe the ones who get the most ad money and sponsorship deals are the ones who never challenge the donor class. That's why reparations, economic justice, and FBA-specific demands get called divisive or impractical, because the money says so. Let's talk receipts. Every time FBAs push for economic power, for real investment in our neighborhoods, for contracts, for business loans, for land, dark money works overtime to keep us in check. They'll flood the city council with cash to block any set-aside for black business. They'll back candidates who will study reparations but never vote for it. They'll put their people in place to make sure community investment means condos for the rich and crumbs for us. And then they roll out the Jasmine Crockett's of the world, polished, articulate, ready to clap back and distract, but never ready to break with the donor class. They'll tell you dark money is just politics, but family, it's how politics always gets turned against us. You ever wonder why, after decades of voting blue, marching, and organizing, FBAs still get the short end of every stick? It's not a mystery. It's by design, and dark money is the main ingredient. You can't fight for the people when your bills, your platform, and your future depend on the people who never wanted FBAs to have power in the first place. And now in 2025, it's worse than ever. The donor class is global. Big tech, hedge funds, multinational corporations. They don't care about black folks in St. Louis, Detroit, or Atlanta. They care about keeping the power flowing, and they'll pay any price to make sure the only black voices that get heard are the ones who already cashed the check. So when Jasmine Crockett gets up and says, "Don't worry, dark money will save the day," believe her. That's exactly what the system wants. FBAs, we have to stop confusing access with power, symbolism with substance, and viral moments with real liberation. The game is older than any of us, but that doesn't mean we can't flip the script. Let's break down the mechanics, family. Dark money doesn't just influence, it selects. It decides which black candidates are safe for donors, which ones get campaign cash, and which ones the media will boost. If you ever wondered how some folks go from local nobody to national spokesperson for the black community overnight, check the donor list. Every time FBAs start talking lineage, reparations, or economic justice, the donor new faces on stage and says, not democracy. That's plantation politics with better lighting. Here's how it works. First, dark money discovers a black politician, maybe a young lawyer, a preacher, or a social media firebrand. Suddenly, their campaign is flush with cash. They have consultants, ads, slick websites. They're invited on TV to clap back, run interference, and keep the grassroots docile. What are they really selling? Access. Not power for the people, but proximity to the donor table. They talk a good game about fighting for justice, but check the receipts. Who paid for that campaign? Who's writing the PAC checks? It's never the bloc, never the elders, never the FBA grassroots. Education, same scam. School board elections, supposed to be about the kids, get flooded with outside money. Foundations, corporations, and ed reform groups spend millions to back candidates who will push charters, defund neighborhood schools, and contract out black teaching jobs to corporate chains. They'll say it's about innovation, but the only innovation is finding new ways to cut the community out of its own future. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett and her kind will show up for photo ops, but disappear when it's time to fight for real investment in FBA schools. Housing? Watch the city council. Every so-called revitalization project in black neighborhoods is funded by donors with plans for condos, dog parks, and wine bars. The black politician gets a ribbon cutting, a campaign donation, and a headline. The people get rent hikes, eviction notices, and another wave of displacement. The folks who can't be bought get labeled radical and shut out of meetings. The ones who play ball get reelected, then never deliver. Now let's talk about reparations. Every poll shows FBAs are united on this. Cut the check. But who's always studying the issue, watering it down, or talking in circles about equity and inclusion instead of reparations? The candidates with the deepest donor pockets. They'll show up at the rally, take a selfie with a sign, and the next day vote to study the issue for another 4 years. Why? Because the people who fund their campaigns never wanted to see that check cut in the first place. And it's not just politicians, media too. Which black voices get the biggest platforms? The ones who never say lineage, the ones who talk diversity and people of color, but never FBA. That's by design, funded by advertisers and donors who want blackness without black demands. The Jasmine Crockett's of the world will always have a seat at the table as long as they keep FBAs asleep and the donor class satisfied. So, family, what does this mean for our real world lives? It means our schools stay underfunded no matter how many historic elections we turn out for. It means our businesses get left out of city contracts while out-of-town developers rake in millions. It means our calls for police reform get turned into task forces that never deliver results. It means every year we're told to wait our turn, trust the process, and unite for the greater good, while our needs are always last on the list, if we even make the list at all.
Attention, Team Kringle. Moon up! Dreaming of a bright Christmas? You're gonna love Christmas.
List on the list, if we even make the list at all. Let's not get it twisted. Dark money doesn't care about black progress, only about managing black dissent. They want to make sure every time FBAs rise up, there's a paid face ready to calm things down, redirect the anger, and deliver the crowd back to the same old system. But the real ones are waking up. We're starting to demand FBA-specific policies. We're looking past the boulet class and checking the donor list. We're backing candidates who can't be bought, and we're building our own tables, our own businesses, our own political machines. That's what scares the system. An FBA movement that can't be co-opted, distracted, or sold out for a check. The future of FBAs depends on whether we can keep that energy going, whether we can turn our outrage into action, our receipts into strategy, and our legacy into leverage. No more waiting for someone to give us permission. No more getting hyped for viral moments while our demands get ignored in the back room. No more letting dark money decide our destiny. And if the Jasmine Crockett's of the world think they can keep running this play, keep selling out the block for donor praise, family, it's on us to hold them accountable. If they won't fight for us, we need to replace them with those who will. If they don't want to be for FBAS, they can step aside and let the real ones lead. This is about more than just one election cycle. It's about our future, our children, our neighborhoods, and our right to shape our own narrative. It's about making sure that the next generation of FBAs knows they don't have to sell out to succeed. They can build, lead, and thrive on their own terms. So, family, don't get distracted by the shiny candidates and the slick ads. Follow the money, check the receipts, and keep the focus on what really matters. Lineage, justice, and FBA empowerment. The time for playing nice is over. The time for building real power is now. Let's bring it all home, family. You want to know the real danger of dark money? It isn't just the policies it blocks, the schools it underfunds, or the neighborhoods it gentrifies. It's the spirit of compromise it spreads in our leadership. The Boulay class isn't just ineffective, they're infected. Once you take the donor's dollar, it changes everything. You don't speak for FBAs anymore, you speak for the check. And the more you cash, the further you drift from the block, the barbershop, the nail salon, the kitchen table. You forget who you are and you forget who sent you. That's why when Jasmine Crockett gets up and brags about dark money coming through for the Democrats, it's not a flex, it's a confession. She's telling you, plain as day, I work for them, not for you. She's letting you know that every speech, every appearance, every clapback is about keeping her seat at the donors table, not fighting for FBAs. The real ones see through all that. We know who's in the room when deals get made, who gets invited to the power lunches, and who gets left outside holding the Black Voters Matter sign while the real decisions are made behind closed doors. If you ever wonder why the most passionate, relentless, and FBA-centered leaders always seem to get the least press, the fewest endorsements, and the hardest road, that's the price of refusing to play the donors game. So what does real FBA leadership look like? It looks like accountability. It looks like transparency. It looks like someone who shows you the receipts, not just the sound bites. It's a leader who says no to dark money, no to backroom deals, and yes to FBA-specific policies, land, contracts, education, and reparations. It's about building our own institutions, funding our own campaigns, and refusing to wait for someone else's permission. We have to stop confusing access with power. Jasmine Crockett and the Boulay class have all the access in the world, but what have they delivered? Are our neighborhoods safer, our schools stronger, our businesses richer, our children freer, or are we just getting more hashtags, more holidays, more murals, and more first black this and that with nothing to show for it but photo ops and headlines? It's time for FBAs to stop letting dark money set the terms. We don't need another study, another summit, another celebrity panel. We need receipts, we need policy, we need real investment. If our elected officials can't deliver, we need to build the apparatus to replace them. No apologies, no excuses. Don't let the system gaslight you into believing that clapbacks and viral moments are victories. The real win is generational wealth, institutional power, and community control. If your favorite Black politician can't say the word reparations without flinching, if they can't name FBA lineage without stuttering, if they're more loyal to donors than to you, they're not your leader. They're the system's mascot. And let's make this plain. We will not win by begging, by waiting, or by hoping that the people who broke us will suddenly decide to fix us. We win by moving as a unit, by backing only those who back us, and by putting every elected official, Black, white, Democrat, or whatever, on notice. Either you're for FBAS or you're in the way. To the Jasmine Crockett's and every Boulay shill reading this, enjoy the donor parties while they last. When the smoke clears and FBAs have built our own tables, your time will be up. The only legacy worth leaving is one that lifts your people up, not one that sells them out for a bigger campaign fund. Family, the days of being led by folks who dance for dollars are over. The days of empty symbolism, pretty speeches, and donor-driven politics. Contracts, the deed, the policy, the seat at the table we built. And if you can't bring it, don't come to the block at all. Before important move of all, join me and the team on AfroWire PM Central. You heard that right? It's a La Sherika doubleheader. We're not just talking about strategizing for solutions. This is your space, your platform, your voice. Uncut, unbought, and unapologetically FBA. So get your snacks, pull up with the family, and get ready, because I'm not letting up. Brotha Phil isn't letting up, and this movement is just getting started. Stay sharp, stay relentless, and don't let anybody buy your spirit. It's La Sherika, straight, no chaser, reminding you that when FBAs move as one, no amount of dark money can dim our shine. See y'all at 8, doubleheader, baby.
Stay connected with global Black communities. Download the African Diaspora News Channel app and keep up with power.
This is
Wasn't until
the
January
King Hart
that Aboriginal people in Australia were considered
from
humans.
Shang out in Kenya.
In January 1967, there was a national referendum to decide Aboriginal Australians should have Australian citizenship. Up to that point, they were officially, and you can document this, classified as flora and fauna and plants and animals.
Australia, they would literally breed out the melanin of the people.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren and I'm Maureen. So in today's episode, we're going to be listening to the Aboriginals and melanated people of Australia. And for the longest time, we've been hearing from Americans and a few times from Black Brits and a few Black people from Europe who speak about racism and what colonization or slavery did to them. But in today's episode, we're going to be focusing on the Aboriginals of Australia and what it is like living in Australia as a Black person. Right, guys, in today's episode, it's gonna be an eye opener, and I feel like when you listen to what they're saying, it makes me realize that white people across the world are all the same, and I guess it makes sense because they all share a common ancestor, but the behavior is exactly the same. And my question is, as a melanated nation, as a melanated group or any other people of color, how did it get to such a point where just one race was able to enslave all the others, and right now it got to a point where they've put themselves in a place where they are the ones thinking for others, they're the ones like leading others, they're the ones who set the pace of how things should go. And you know what I mean. I don't know, guys. Let us know what you think about this episode on the comment section. We'd really like to know your thoughts and opinion. Also, consider subscribing if it's your first time here. But for now, let's watch and then we come back with our commentary. Yeah, and before we go, I'd also like to point out that in as much as a group is usually judged by the action of many in that group, it is also important to note that it's not all white people who behave this way, right? So, guys, let's watch and then you come back and talk about it.
You've got a little girl. Would you let her swim with Aboriginal children in the swimming pool?
Oh, well, they'd be as good as what she is.
And you think the children should be allowed to swim together?
Of course. You should. They're all children, they're all the same.
Would you swim with?
No, I don't. I wouldn't swim in the bath with them, although I like the old had quite a lot to do with him.
And you think they should be allowed to swim, especially the kids?
Certainly do think so.
What about
my heart? Come to a person who knows quite a lot about the treatment of Aboriginals.
And you think that the children should be allowed to swim in the
I-
pools with the white children?
Indeed, yes. I think that the apathy would be worse here than the Africa if they don't do something constructive about the children.
What do you think about this segregation against Aborigines in Western towns in New South Wales?
I reckon there should be none of it.
Yeah,
There should be white, black, all together.
I think that the Australian Aborigines is equal to one of us. As you know, they were the first in the land before us, and I reckon segregation against them is silly and ridiculous. I think that they should have the equal rights such as any Australian should have today.
Well spoken. Do you sell newspapers, do you?
Yeah, I sell newspapers at Newtown Bridge, and I'm a good salesman of that.
Guys, you know, watching these clips, it just all of a sudden gives me a new perspective on things. Do you realize how much it can be easier for people to get along? Because I feel like for the most part of it, it's white men who created these harmful systems, right?
Yeah.
And if white women could stand with the other groups that are being harmed, and if they all could stand and work together, then I feel like the world would be a better place, you know? Right.
Can you stop? I'm really tired of non-Indigenous peoples making commentaries about Indigenous Australia because we've spent yourself included, we have spent 230 years of not being included in this constitution. We share sovereignty with the Crown. The Queen still owns some of our traditional lands. We're still begging to protect sacred sites that are over 80,000 years old from gas companies. We want to be the author of our own destinies. We want to be the voice because we are tired of non-Indigenous Australia thinking they know what is good for us and thinking that they can be the voice for Aboriginal Australia. So they should all learn to keep their mouth shut and start engaging Aboriginal Australia into the conversation.
I really do like seeing
the tech skills gap is real, and companies are paying top dollars for qualified professionals. Here's how you can cash in with no degree required. At NGT Academy, we built a military-grade IT training program that has helped thousands of people just like you land life-changing roles at top companies like Cisco, Google, Amazon, Visa, all without a degree. In fact, we've got a proven track record of helping students secure high-paying tech jobs in as little as 14 weeks. How do we do it? It's a three-pronged approach. First, our hands-on foundational military-grade training. Developed by former U.S. Air Force instructors, our system mirrors the rigorous real-world training used to prepare military professionals. We're talking about managing mission-critical networks in months, not years. Secondly, we've got Silicon Valley backing with over $10 million invested by top firms like Y Combinator and Altos Ventures. We've created a cutting-edge training framework and learning management system that bridges the gap between you
seeing melanated people and Aboriginal people from Australia speak up about their rights and what they need without necessarily having to rely on the white man to speak up for them on what they themselves need, you know. Right. It's like they say, the way she said, you cannot allow other people to speak on your behalf and talk about what you need or what you do not need. There's this one saying that says, if you do not wear a certain type of shoes, you cannot know where it hurts, right? And one thing I can say for clear is that even for white people, I can never understand how white people feel, especially when they walk in the sun. There are things that we cannot understand about white people. We cannot understand why they need to wash their hairs every day, and we only see the results if they don't, you know. And that is something you cannot know. Like, for example, us here in Africa, we cannot know that fact unless you hear it or see it from somebody, or you live close to these people. You know? And even at that, after we hear it, we can never truly understand what the white person is or the concept of the white person. And that is why I can never even myself support the idea of me as an African standing up to be an advocate of a white person or the community that is, you know. Exactly. So I really don't understand why, where there is a community where both white and black people or Aboriginals share the land, white people are representing even the Aboriginals in places like political seats in parliament, yet they don't know how these Aboriginal people live and where their shoe pinches, you know. Right.
Telling me to go back where I come from or to my own country or deport me or whatever. Sorry, but what do you think I am / from? What's happening? I'm like 100%. I can understand if an Aboriginal person was saying that, but my fellow Australians are saying it to me. Where am I from? I'm 100% white, West European.
Oh, we don't see color. Color doesn't mean anything. You see color. If someone speaks, sounds, or looks a certain way, they might be completely Australian. It doesn't matter. We're exhibiting more traits stereotypically of Islander does, or what a black person does, or an Asian. Not really about who you are on the inside, or about how you present what is an Australian and what's it meant to look like. If Australians are looking at him going, go back to where you're from, they have the moral standing, the ethical, cultural, nationalism to be like, you're not from here, get out. Everyone always goes, stop being a victim. It's not about race. To my understanding, the person who actually is white, who doesn't present as white, tell him to go back. So we can tell him to go back. What do you think they're going to tell me?
The funny thing is that the people who always talk about you're not from here, go back to where you came from, it's not about race. The people who are normally loudest on this are the white people, right? Even in Europe, we've seen cases where apparently it started backfiring, and now not a lot of people say that, or those cases have gone quiet, where they've not gone quiet, they've just reduced. They've reduced on the internet, but it got so bad to a point where black people used to be told every time, even in Europe, go back to where you're coming from. And let me just pass this point across. There are people who are born in Europe who happen to be black, right? Who necessarily don't have any relationship with Africa. They've been accepted from their ancestry, right? They've been living in Europe like generations and generations, yeah? And even those ones who are citizens are still being told, go back to where you're coming from. So why should you feel offended when you're looking like this, you're a palm-colored person, and somebody tells you to go back to where you're coming from? Because everybody has a history, right? And what's very interesting about the video that you've just watched is this was a white person being told by other white people to go back to where he's coming from. And this brother, I believe he's also Australian, he was asking, If a white person can be told, go back to where you're coming from, what about a person who looks like him? I feel like person, aura for aura, I feel like it would be fair if all people across the world were to be told, go back to where you're coming from. It's time, or even then, they start retracing their ancestry and they start retracing their true origin. Because nowhere they are settling originally belonged to them. Even in South Africa, we do hear that when white people immigrated to South Africa, of course, they try and change history. It's so bad to a point where the generation today, there are those who genuinely believe so they were the original settlers of South Africa, and South Africa belongs to white people, and that black people should be a migratory community that found them in South Africa. But let's continue watching, guys.
And to every single Australian who thinks they're more deserving than the real Australians, the Indigenous peoples, just listen, just hear me out. Let's say somebody comes into your house, your entire family except for you, and in front of you demolishes the whole house and goes to school. You would feel so violated, disrespected, and upset. Let's say the school's running and all the students are just looking at you and just acting like you don't deserve to be there, treating you like absolute crap, by the way, bullying you, singling you out, alienating you in your own home. But they're saying that it's not your home, it's their home. They're saying all they've known is this school and they don't know who you are and why you think that you're deserving of being here. And you're saying, no, well, this is my home. I was here before, I swear. But they're still looking at you sideways and they're still judging you. How would you feel? Wouldn't you feel outraged? Wouldn't you ask for a say in the rules or being represented? Or wouldn't you just ask to be acknowledged? As single, just acknowledgement for respect. That's what they're asking for. And then people in my comments are saying, oh, well, we've apologized so many times. What's apology without change? Sorry, what is apology? It's literally manipulation. That's what you guys are doing. It's the same in a toxic relationship when the guy says, sorry, I'll change, I'll be better, and he turns around tomorrow and cheats on you 7 times in front of you.
The people of Australia, originally Australia was an African land. In fact, in European documentation, they considered it an African satellite. When the British came into Australia and began the mass extermination of African people, they were crystal clear who they were exterminating because they said it. And also we know that right off the coast of Australia was an island called Tasmania, a little island off the coast of Tasmania. There are no living Tasmanians in existence right now. You can't find a Tasmanian man, woman, or child because the British systematically exterminated the entire population.
It wasn't until January 1967 that Aboriginal people in Australia were considered humans for the first time. In January 1967, there was a national referendum to decide Aboriginal Australians should have Australian citizenship. Up to that point, they were officially, and you can document this, classified as flora and fauna and plants and animals.
Australia, they would literally breed out the melanin of the people. They would have they would take the children and take them to breeding camps and breeding farms and breed the darker ones and the mulatto ones with white. And they would literally breed the melanin out of these people. The movie Rabbit Proof Fence is about that breeding process, them breeding out the melanin of the Aboriginal people. So it's very deep what was going on over there.
When people talk about Australia, they love to highlight the beaches, the accents, the kangaroos. But you rarely hear them talk about the blood beneath the soil. Because Australia is just like the US. It wasn't discovered. It was invaded. And the first thing they tried to do was wipe the oldest living culture off the face of the earth. So let's back up for a second. The Aboriginal people of Australia had been on that continent for 65,000 years. Let that sit. They are the oldest continuous culture on Earth. Not only did they live in harmony with the land, they had complex languages, spiritual systems, astronomy, trade, and none of it was savage or primitive. But when the British showed up in 1788, they saw none of that. They saw a land they wanted and people they thought didn't count. So they claimed the land as nobody's land, like people weren't already living there. And what followed was centuries of massacre, displacement, slavery, and dehumanization. Aboriginal people were hunted like animals. Entire tribes were wiped out. Their water sources were poisoned. Children were taken. Women were assaulted, men were imprisoned, sometimes for just being Aboriginal. Their language banned, their cultural practices outlawed, their sacred land stolen. They weren't even considered full citizens on their land until 1967. Let me repeat that. The original custodians of that land weren't counted as people until less than 60 years ago. And from the late 1800s to the 1970s, Black. That's not an exaggeration. That's what they actually called it. They took thousands of Aboriginal children from their families, the stolen generation, and placed them in white homes or church institutions. Sound familiar? They erased their names, told them their families didn't want them. And when those children cried for their mothers, nobody came. Because colonialism isn't just about land, it's about memory. And they were trying to erase it all. So when you hear people talk about Australia like it's just another Western paradise, know this. There's blood in the soil and trauma in the air. And the world is still catching up to the truth. Because Aboriginal people didn't just survive genocide. They preserved the oldest culture on the planet through it. And that's resistance. That's legacy. That's a miracle the colonizers couldn't kill, no matter how hard they tried. No matter how hard they tried.
Entertainment purposes only.
When the descendants of defective sibling DNA stabilized, it's projection. Because in the 1500s, their lice-infested, disease-ridden ancestors dragged over 30 deadly diseases to this continent, which kicked off more than 80% of the indigenous population because they were walking biohazards who did not bathe. These are people who literally threw their feces and urine outside of their windows and watched it fester in the streets until it rained and turned their towns into diarrhea soup. Meanwhile, indigenous people in the 1500s had public sanitation, organized waste removal, clean streets they swept and washed daily, and people who bathed daily, sometimes twice. We literally had to teach these carrying invaders how to wash their asses. And then Mr. Trump University says we lived in tents. Tents? Our cities had towering architecture and stone temples that dwarfed anything in Europe during that time. In the Americas, and in Africa. And since you mentioned Africa, Africans were master architects who gave the world mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and engineering. Europe produced the colonizers who stole it all. Europe gave the world genocide, colonization, and syphilis. And some of y'all still don't bathe.
So guys, welcome back. Listening to this video, the ones that we've compiled for you today, one thing I've come to realize is that
put it in the comment section if you bathe every day. That's what the lady was just talking about.
That you do realize that the Black community carries a very heavy pain, that sometimes some of us may not even know we are carrying, because listening to these people and how they live in Australia, I do believe that colonization and slavery, it did something to the Black community, and the fact that it has never been properly addressed or apologized and other communities gotten reparations, it's what makes this thing even more painful. It feels like the Black communities constantly have to push down their pain in order for them to move past the pain they're feeling. Right. My question is, Black people had their own systems. Like, for example, here in Africa, people had medicines, traditional medicines that worked for them. People knew how to heal the body without necessarily having these modern inventions that we have right now. But for some reason, there's a lot of things that the communities could cure themselves that right now, if you try and find the record for this, you will not find it anywhere. You understand? There are a lot of inventions that people had. There are a lot of languages that people spoke that right now have gone extinct because
listening to the twins saying out
that your way of living was a savage way of living, and that your way of living was very primitive. The funny thing is that today I saw a video on TikTok where there's this African who went to live in Australia, right? And she was saying how much she had dressed up, even worn shoes to go out, only to realize that the normal average Australian walks barefoot in
Carissa
Australia
Shields, she won last night in Detroit.
Curiosity, and this she found out
She's supposed to be
because
fighting Layla Ali
because of
next
the
or somebody
venomous,
else. But put in the
animals,
comment
they
section who
don't
y'all think
react
she
to,
gonna
like,
fight
for
next.
example, spiders, snakes. So people might just wake up
Stay
to
in
wear your
position
shoes and
radio.
you don't know that there's a snake hiding in it or a spider hiding in it. So for this reason, others choose to walk barefoot, And so in her, I decided to go into her comment section because I found it was interesting, And in her comment section, I found people who are bitter, Africans and others, who are talking about when white people came into Africa and found people walking barefooted, they called us primitive and they called us, savages, just because we were not conforming to what they considered an okay way of living in society, So for them, when Africans or any other black person was walking barefoot, it wasn't appealing. But for them, when they do it, it's something that is very much glorious. And so I looked at that, and that was a very good example because in America, there are people who made a trend out of walking barefoot. They call it earthing, right? And to be honest, walking barefoot, those are things that have its own benefits, much as it has its own disadvantages. But people used to, when the times that people used to walk barefoot, and I can tell you this for free, even here in Kenya, not just in Kenya, but Africa, when you go to the very rural parts of Africa or Kenya, you find people who still walk barefooted, and these people are very healthy. Somehow you get to connect with us, and then there's a way. I don't know how many of you can prove this, right? But I do believe when you wear shoes, it kind of alters your feet, because your leg develops to adapt kind of to how your shoes fit you, So for that reason, I'm like, when white people do things, it's considered fashionable, it's glorified, things of that nature. But when it's coming from a black person or a person of color, then it's something that is frowned down upon. They look down on it, and the things of that nature. So Aboriginals, I was also quite surprised to learn that they were not considered human beings, and only until 1967 is when they were considered human beings, meaning before they legally recognized as humans, what were they looking at Aboriginals as, and what were they doing to these people before they started looking at them as humans, Right, I can only imagine, right. And guys, it's not so hard to believe that there was a point in life where Aboriginals were put into camps and they were breeding out their melanin by making them mingle with white people and having white babies, stuff like that, because it has happened before in the case of Argentina, which we'll always use as the most successful prime example and the most successful point of reference, And as I hear Aboriginals of Australia speak like this, I feel like this is not the first conversation we are hearing. We've been hearing it a lot with the black community of America, right? And as we always say, the black community of America was the most vocal about what happened to them and slavery. And right now, we started hearing a few people from other different communities in the black communities, the black Brits of Europe, and now the Aboriginals of Australia, And also, we kind of see a few Africans also try and debunk how slavery changed the continent. What I have to say is that all these communities experienced pain from the same person, And how do we fix this? And as just one lady has spoken here, she said that in order for black people to truly know who they are, we must start by rewriting our own history, because right now, a lot of people in the black community are walking with heavy baggage and they don't even know what is weighing them down. And this is generational trauma of the system they've grown under, And for white people, there is also another melanated sister here. She was wearing a red hoodie. She was saying that an apology alone is not enough, and they do agree with her on this. And some people might want to ask, how then do we make things better? And to that, I'd say, just by simply starting to change the systemic racism and how they've set up the system to only benefit them while disadvantaging a big number of the melanated population. You look at, I feel like there's a lot of ways they could change things around. A lot. If you give an apology, I feel like you can also, instead of talking it, you can also walk the apology by how you decide to show change. You can show it through your actions. The first thing is agreeing and accepting that you did another community wrong and accepting the full consequences of that, because it's easy to say we are not our ancestors and therefore we are not responsible for what they did, but are you benefiting from the systems they left behind? Yes, you are. So how can you undo that? The first thing I felt like Black Americans gave a blueprint of what would be a show of a good start of faith. You know, you can start by reparations to Black people. And so this is where you sit down and ask, who deserves reparations, you know. And I feel like there are different countries that holds white people, and you have to look at, because the same way, you cannot say you will give the reparations to Black Americans and for it to look like people from Congo, you know. It will manifest itself in different ways. So whatever Black Americans feels like, that would be a good way of giving them reparations. That is what you have to sit down, consider, and act on it, you know, as a show of good faith. You know, for Belgium, you sit down and look at, first of all, agree that you did that country harm, and then look at how you can turn things around, you know. Look at what they did to Congo and its citizens. You know, I feel like that is something that the way somebody can talk and say Africans were colonized to a point where their brains are still colonized to this day. It's a true statement, because for Africans, they were made to believe that they were stupid. They were made to believe that nothing good can ever come out of Africa.
Right.
And
right now, most of us still believe that when we walk into a room to look for a job, and amongst us is one white person, the white person is fit to rule all of us.
And that is
the mentality that is in Africa.
Right. That is why you find Africans,
he'll be given priority to talk, he'll be given priority to aside to. Anyway, you get the whole picture.
Exactly. And that is where you find Africans right now risking their lives to get to the first world country, because they believe nothing good can come out of Africa. You know, so the mind is still colonized. So in short, there's a lot of things you can do to undo what your ancestors did and whatever systems they left behind. There's a lot of things you can undo. I feel like, okay, this world is not fair, and whoever said that, I feel like it was a founding father of the white supremacy. You know why? Okay, I'm saying that because indeed the world is not fair. And when you look at American structure, Black people are the least people who are cared about in America. Even in healthcare system, you find systemic racism. In education, you find that racism in their systems. They purposefully fail Black kids, you know, to just put them behind, or they present very difficult hurdles compared to their white counterparts to ensure that the Black child graduates. When you look at Australia, they have their own issues that they're going through, that when you sit side by side, you take a melanated person from Australia, take a melanated person from America, take a melanated person from Africa, they start talking, you find that they have a lot more to bond over, because they've gone through the same issues, but it manifested in different ways, you know. So you ask yourself, what can be done about this, right? Because I feel like in today's age and time, like, no one has the luxury to sit down, especially if you're a palm-colored person, and say that you don't know what racism looks like. I feel like right now, internet has done its best to bring people's stories and testimonies to your doorstep, literally to your screens, for you to know what happens on a daily life, you know.
So guys, let us know what you think about this episode. Maren, do you have any last words? Or
last words to me, I'd say there's a lady who spoke here in the first clip, amongst the first clips, and she's Aboriginal and she's also an actress. I love the fact that she was not afraid to speak when she had the podium and told that journalist who was white and trying to shut her on
what being Aboriginal is.
Yes, he is a white man who's a journalist. Do you know white men are the most privileged people on earth? Like, literally, they work with a lot of privilege, you know. And he's trying to explain to her the struggles Aboriginal people go through, and she's sitting right beside him. That's her job, literally, to echo whatever her people are going through, you know. And she wasn't afraid, because there's ways that could have ended. She can't be blackballed from the industry she's in. She can be outcasted for speaking out for her own people, you know. And my thing is, guys, whenever something bad happens, just turn the mirror on them, for them to know that it is wrong, and you're aware that whatever they're doing to you is not correct, you know. You know, when things are done in darkness is when it flourishes. I see props during not during daylight, at night, right?
Yeah.
When you call him out for being a thief, you'll be more careful if he doesn't stop in your house. About robbing your house, because he knows rumors are out there that he is a thief.
Right. And look at abusing partners. They only do it because
Their partners stay
people
quiet.
outside the house pretend not to. Okay, neighbors might know, but they won't involve themselves if somebody doesn't ask for help, right? So, if the partner keeps quiet, it only happens in the house. That gives the abuser that layer of protection. They continue doing it. But if you start being a chatterbox and you start talking up, asking for help, this person is gonna be scared to continue to do that to you, you know. And that, reflecting on today's topic, is what I'm saying. A lot of voices, the strength in number, the strength in unity. Echo out your stories and bring them out so that they know. Right, those are points where
Wear them in the face, because I once heard that some, not all, some white people don't like being told the truth of the cruelty they exhibited to the world.
Yeah.
But when you tell them that truth, of course there is denial, because no one ever likes to be told you are a bad person. But gradually with time, they start seeing what you're telling them,
Right.
and them themselves start being advocates of change amongst their own community.
Right, and there was a point where a half-colored person could afford the luxury of saying that they are not their ancestors, and they could pretend that they, or maybe they didn't know out of ignorance what their ancestors did to other groups of people. But right now they can't afford that luxury, being that it stares them in the eyes every time people talk, you know.
Right? Because to be quite honest with you, growing up, I didn't know in Australia there were black people. Actually, what made me know that there were black people, more so Aboriginals of Australia, was movies. There was there was a movie called Tidelander that we watched, and that was the first time I ever saw a black a black Australian, and then followed by a movie called Wentworth, which was an Australian production also. And in that movie is where we saw this lady, and we were like, oh, Australia has
We didn't
black
even know what
people.
Aboriginals were.
Wow.
Were like when she was asked, "What are you? Are you an Aboriginal?" And we were like, "What's that?
that?
Are we
What
not
is
humans?"
that?
Anyway, that is part of growth, and that is part of eradicating ignorance.
Yeah,
You
man.
need to know thy
Gonna be
history.
closing out in a
If
minute,
I
but
may say.
Guys, let us know
I
what
just
you think
came on to
about
say
this
about
episode, and
Carissa
you can
Shields,
also
man. She was
consider
giving old girl
subscribing
them
if
body
you're new to our
blows.
channel, and we'll see you on our next
Old girl
episode.
couldn't take that. They were talking about, they were talking about racism, basically. All that racist BS.
Of an airplane flying.
I had a job interview at this place the other day, and when I walked in, they was looking me upside my head like they was racist, whispering amongst each other. I seen them eyeballing me to the time I walked out. So, I felt uncomfortable being around them racist bigots, So I wouldn't work at no place like that. But yeah, man, y'all let me know a racist experience y'all went through. I go through them all the time, So just stand your ground, man. Don't never be afraid of them racist bigots. Benjamin Netanyahu, you a big head motherfucker, you bitch. Entertainment purposes only. I don't even understand why you still trying to be going to war with motherfuckers, man. You can't win every war. Somebody gonna shut that shit down, man. Entertainment purposes only. It's a matter of time. You talking all that bullshit, you big head motherfucker. Benjamin Netanyahu. Entertainment purposes only, man. Everybody stay in position, man. Let's see what's going on. Popeye the Sailor Man got a new movie coming out. Peacemaker with John Cena supposed to be coming out. Ain't nothing really going on, but they hide all the news on the weekend. So y'all gotta make your own news. Try to find something to see what the hell going on. But I'm gonna come back on there later or tomorrow or something. Y'all let me know what's going on or whatever. Subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna make it more interesting later on down the road, but shit, right now this is what I'm doing. So fuck it. Stay in position radio, man. Let's get it.